Hi. Hi, everybody. I'm Olivia Jezler, and I'm here to talk about AI and the future of fragrance. I guess this is it. So, I wanted to start with a question. Did you know that the first form of life on Earth, the single celled organism, couldn't see, hear, touch, or but it could smell? So, our chemical senses, taste and smell, are used to understand our surroundings, find food, and are important for reproduction. So, this was already important at the time when there was only one single cell. And now, if we take a look at our sensory receptors here, there's vision and touch. Vision works with light. Touch, we're talking about temperature as well as the sensation of pressure. Hearing, we're measuring vibration, and taste and smell are our chemical senses. And you can see the similarity in the structure. Because of that, they're both kind of similar in what they're doing. Oopsie daisies. So if we take a look at where smell happens in the brain, we're talking dead smack center on the bottom part of the brain. And so, according to Rachel Hertz, smell and our limbic system actually was formed out of the olfactory cortex. And so what this means is that memory, emotion, and learning all stem from smell in our evolutionary process. And this is because of, being able to taste something that's poisonous and then we avoid it, and that's how we learn, and that's why smell is so important for evolution. So given that smell has such a central role, why is it that in society it's kind of deemed one of the least respected senses? So this stems from Western thought and the birth of Western thought and civilization, which started with the ancient Greek. So here in the center we see Plato and Aristotle, and they were the fathers of Western thought, and they essentially said that sight and hearing are, that's how we're able to understand the world, have scientific discussions, talk about philosophy. So the senses of touch, taste, and smell are really just they're too much not based on reason. So they're not based on reason, they're based on instinct. So for this reason, we're able to see this is a sensory hierarchy that's basically dominated since the ancient Greek times. They developed the sensory hierarchy, but this has basically influenced the way our society thinks about our senses still today, and also impacts the type of scientific research and priorities that we're setting. So even if you lose your sense of smell, for example, there's no way to really test it in a doctor's environment, our sense of smell. Secondly, if we lose it, there's no form of insurance or anything that could cover for it because it's really the least understood and the least respected. So, which brings us to 15 years ago when the first real evolution happened, the first real discovery around smell and how smell works occurred when the Nobel Prize was presented. And since then, only 5 years ago, scientists discovered that we actually have the ability to detect 1 trillion smells. Not 1,000, not 2,000, 1 trillion. So what does this number even really mean? I doubt that anybody here in the audience is able to really conceptualize what 1 trillion even means. Which brings me to the understanding spectrum of how data moves from data to wisdom. This is how we are able to understand and become wise, essentially. So the creators are data and information, and then once we produce it and put it together and compile it, it becomes knowledge and then wisdom. So data is all around us. You guys hear this probably all the time. And, it's green. So even here in Milan, there's probably 1 trillion data points right here. But in its raw state, data is actually just really kind of useless until we're able to organize it and put it into some sort of structure. So which is why I'm going to start talking a bit about just machine learning as a subset of artificial intelligence. So I wanted to outline basically the research that's happening that could be related to fragrance per se. So the prediction of odors based on chemical structure, what does that mean? That means being able to look at a chemical and say, this has an odor and this doesn't have an odor. That's kind of we're able to kind of do that to a certain degree. Being able to look at a chemical structure on the other hand and say what kind of odor this is based on structure, this is really one of the biggest challenges, and we don't really know yet how to go about that. So the prediction of molecular activity, why is that important? That's important for chemistry in general, being able to understand how molecules interact. So for fragrance specifically, things like stability issues, being able to predict that is very important. For drug discovery, it's extremely important as well. So knowledge discovery from publicly available databases is a way we're using machine learning. And the problem with fragrance is there's not actually that much publicly available information out there. So there's a really great study that's focusing on flavor, and it's called the Flavor Network. And basically what he did is he used publicly available recipes that were on the internet to be able to figure out what flavors could combine and what couldn't. But when it comes to fragrance, this is really difficult because there's not a lot of information out there. Mapping a standardized odor language is important in being able to then essentially use it in a fragrance finder or things like that. Being able to say also create maybe a Pantone type of system where or anywhere around the world we're able to say that there's a specific name or number related to that specific smell. Which allows for better classification, and in the end, it's better for being able to use in machine learning. So this is one of the scientists I've been talking to, and so he says the greatest challenge lies in being able to predict scent from a chemical structure. Yet it is still completely unclear and unresolved how we would be able to solve this. Well, that's pretty exciting, huh? So I wanted to bring us back to talk a little bit about machine learning and how it works today. So what we're doing today is the way we are able to predict a photograph, for example, is we're mimicking the way our eye sees and building networks based on the way our vision is processed. So what that means is there's multiple steps involved in the process, which requires a lot of data and a lot of processing power. This is great for being able to predict like a picture, but when it comes to more complicated things, there's other possibilities. So in terms of odor, so scientists are now looking into odor. Like, why don't we just map the way our brain detects smells and use that in machine learning? So why would we do that? Because as you can see, there's much less layers. So that means it can happen much faster, with much more complex data. And why would this be important or relevant today? Well, essentially, it's the most relevant for autonomous vehicles, because for autonomous vehicles, we have to process so much information, and it's very critical information, so it has to happen really quickly. So that's where olfaction-based machine learning could be really useful and applied. Information is meaningful organization of data. So we have all this data, and until we really organize it, it doesn't really have meaning. So we need to take into account the relationships, which can then be designed into tools. Tools like these for perfumers. So this was pretty recent. The Carte by Givaudan. Carte by Givaudan is you're basically able to look into olfactory directions and use a very fun touch-based interface to mix around what this fragrance creation might be like. And the coolest part is that it's attached to a robot. And so the robot will allow you to instantly smell what you're creating, which in turn, this really speeds up the creation process for perfumers, the creation and experimentation process. There's not a lot of information on how this works available, which I can understand. So we're not really able to look into that any further at this point in time. On the other hand, unless you've been living under a rock, you would have come across what was happening with Simrise and Philia, their AI system with IBM Watson. So Philia is actually the tool for perfumers. And the way that this is positioned is that it's positioned to be a perfumer, a senior perfumer that works with the master. And helps the master create better fragrances, better and more unique fragrances. So this is from, because it's IBM research, there's actually research available. There's actually things you can read about it. So that's where comes from. And so what this tool does is it learns and predicts information and is able to predict alternatives, alternative materials, it's able to assess the appropriate dosing as well as the novelty of the fragrance. And the goals are technical, so for stability reasons, hedonic, for it to smell good and for it to be really relevant for the market that it's being developed for. And yes. So this is also publicly available, and we're able to see the success. This is the ability to predict success of a fragrance in a market. So it's still at 62%. It's a bit difficult because as soon as this is based on obviously past data, all of this is based on data that's already available. So they're looking at, a successful fragrance and all the all the other copycats that are around it. So these are the nodes of the successes. And so it's kind of difficult to predict success based on this system. However, the ability to predict the gender of the fragrance, that works based on the subnotes in the fragrance, is at 80%. So that could be interesting, potentially. But then it really raises the question of what is the goal? And so the goal is to create unique fragrances that people will like. Okay. So if we take a look at, all the launches that happen throughout the years, and they're just increasing generally, especially the unisex ones, do we really need better fragrances on the market? I mean, we have a whole auditorium here, a lot of space filled with incredible fragrances. I don't know if we need better fragrances, but what is actually the consumer's problem? Like, there's tons of fragrances on the market. According to me, is that the need for knowledge, direction, and meaning in being able to discover the fragrance that they actually like, which is where you guys come in. Because you're storytellers, and a story activates various regions in the brain. This is the way knowledge was passed down for centuries before the written word. And it also releases dopamine into our system, making it easier to remember the story when we're talking, remember the facts when we're talking in complete stories. So when we're talking about multisensory storytelling, it happens in many places. Of course, it starts with the product itself. One product already has it has a story in the packaging and the design and in this fragrance as well. Online we're dealing with, chatbots, UX. This is all an extension of the story. So we're able to these are not just tools. These are ways of telling your story. Pop-ups, we're using the tools of interior design, sound, and video. This is all in the realm of more traditional, what's happening in perfume and retail. And here are experiences, which is a very interesting space that's emerging, but it's less linked to actual perfumes and more about art, research, as well as bringing in new technologies. So my idea and proposition here is we have these two goals. One is to help consumers find the fragrance they love and actually complete a transaction, not just like, yay, I like it, give me a sample for free. Complete a transaction. The other goal is for the experiences. Their goal is to offer people novel experience and develop proofs of concept for the technology. And so what if we could generate value and innovation together in this space where we're able to create awesome smelling fragrances, make sales, and create beautiful experiences? So, but first, who are these enablers and potential collaborators for people like you? So this is a great enabler. This is the odor wheel, IBM Research. It's just going to show its initial research in understanding, matching descriptors to monomolecules that have a smell. And so this is important just in general to be able to create an odor language and be able to share and communicate odor in a way that everybody can understand. But the limitations here is culture and language. So this is English based on American culture. So as soon as we go into another culture and language, these definitions and things have to be rethought out. So the cross-modal psychology lab. So this is very interesting. This is based on psychology. So what Charles Spence is doing is he's working on understanding how our senses interact. So how, for example, a sound will influence the flavor of your beer, or a smell is linked to a specific direction in space or a light form. And being able to understand these separate elements of perception, once we put them together, we're able to form deeper and more impactful experiences. But this has to start somewhere. So he's working on specific elements in psychology and the senses, a lot to do with food, which is also very interesting. This I brought as an example because I think it's quite interesting for the perfume world. This is a researcher at their media lab, and so she creates a CAD system where you're able to put in emotions, and you can see little sliders, and based on the way you slide, like I'm gonna add a little bit more fear and less happiness and maybe some anxiety, this bottle shape shifts. So what if we're able to create perfume bottles that are actually representations of the feeling we're trying to create? This will allow the person to find the fragrance better and faster, but also essentially, because the bottle is going to be on our dressing table, we're going to look at it, and hopefully that enhances the entire experience around wearing the fragrance as well. So this multisensory Sky Lab is where I spent some time, and this is interesting because it's HCI, so human-computer interaction, where we're dealing with technology and the senses of smell, taste, and touch. So how are we able to use different technologies to enable different experiences, and also doing mapping and understanding the basic psychology research that's necessary? The video. Okay, so this is the Ocean of Air. Let's see. Ocean of Air by the Feelies. This is supposed to be a video. And what's really cool about it is that actually there's a breath sensor when you're in the VR system. So it's able to sense your breath and creates this beautiful surrounding based on your breathing. And also, it's invisible, but you're able to smell. There's also Perfume Sucks, wherever he is, Andreas William. He actually created the smell for this installation, and the smell is barely noticeable, but it's there, and it really enhances the experience. So I noticed it because I work in fragrances, but nobody else who attended this with me even noticed that there was a smell. And that is a really interesting way of using smell to enhance an experience where the experience is enhanced, but people are not focusing on the smell per se. Oh, here we go. We're moving. So this is me in the VR and breathing a little bit, and there's a breath sensor right in front. And it was a pretty incredible experience. This was in London at the Saatchi Gallery. And it was about the interconnectedness of us with the air and the earth, essentially. So this is a storytelling pod, essentially, by the Feelies and Greenpeace. And it's a way of getting engaged with an Amazon tribe. So it really builds, when you're in there, you're basically go into the homes of the Amazon people, and one home of one family, and you really start to empathize, and then it tells you about what's actually happening in the Amazon, who's coming in, and all the more dire implications. But once you build this sort of empathy through smells, taste, touch, heat, humidity, you really feel you're there. I think that's a very impactful way of telling stories and making meaning, as well as call to actions. So Feel Real. Feel Real is a great platform. It's a platform that was funded in less than an hour on Kickstarter. It basically works with any VR headset. They have a set of perfumes that it comes with, or that you can purchase with it. But essentially, what's really cool is there's wind. There's different sensations. But it allows anybody, it's democratizing multisensory VR to anybody to be able to play with and create something with. This is one of my favorites, the Aroma Joint from Japan. as a tool. You're able to hook it up to the computer, create like scent tracks, essentially. I think it holds about 6 or a bit more fragrances in there. They have a whole palette to choose from. And what's really cool is that if you're not in the line of smell, you're not going to smell that smell. So it's really great for interaction design because we usually think, oh, smell is difficult for interactions or for storytelling because you can't really control it. Well, this is a great tool, I think. So Auria and Sensor Wake, which we've all kind of heard about. Auria is for helping you sleep. Sensor Wake is for waking you up, the alarm clock. This is really interesting because it's all connected to your phone. You can have the smells in different rooms in your house and be able to activate the time, various things. So imagine all the data you can also collect and understanding your fragrance preferences and usage is in a home. The Senti Machina, I have not actually played with this yet. It's recent, also out of Japan, but same principle. You're able to from your phone, diffuse different scents in a space. The Esxence by Judith is really taking this to another level. Like a lot of people have been working with smell and emotion and wearables, but she's syncing it to emotion monitors, different kinds of sensors, and essentially syncing the scent release to that. So you're able to use scent in a way that supports you throughout the day. This is a prototype, but the thought is, what could this become one day? And which brings me to question, what if these stories that we're going to be creating are going to be inspired by our own biology? So when we get to wisdom is about meta-knowledge, and meta-knowledge in a biological system or any intelligent system happens through, here we go through the same process, but when time speeds up, all these things, this information, data gathering, and extracting into knowledge all happens at once when the creator, the producer, and the user kind of all become one in this speeding up of time. So I don't know about here, but in the US, Amazon Prime is used very much, and it makes people extremely needing things instantly, whatever the word is. So with that ability to be able to click a button and receive it the next day, we're becoming very in need of instant gratification. Netflix is going so niche. Like, we're not able to realize like the amount of data they have on our usage patterns, on entertainment, on what kind of movies we like. And they're using this to construct their own movies, their own arcs of entertainment. A lot of the videos that are not meant, that we won't like, are not even going to show up in our Netflix. They're taking niche to a whole new level, even to the point of us being able to decide what endings certain films are going to have. So that's a whole other type of personalization. So what I'm saying here is that niche, we're here at a niche conference, but the niche that we're seeing, celebrating craft and beauty and creativity, it's just going to get so much more niche when the time comes. It's already happening. And with that, consumers are going to become much more educated. There's democratizing and a lot of playfulness with fragrance at the moment, and there's criticism around that as well. But in the end, the more access people have, the more educated they become, the more discerning they're going to become about ingredients, understanding blends, and all these kinds of things. And this is all happening, if we like it or not. Oh my God. So, which brings me to the Modal device. This is a blending device, also similar to the other ones. This one out of Saudi is more of like a perfume creator. So like it's synced to a social platform. You're able to share with your friends what you're creating. And then you create these little fragrance vials, actual perfumes to wear, which actually, funnily enough, reminds me of my thesis in 2008. So my thesis was about, the future of fragrance, essentially. And what I was thinking was as a device connected to the computer, where not only we were able to blend and connect to Facebook, but that you would be able to get special palettes from master perfumers. So a master perfumer would have like their suggested palette. You'd be able to play with it, even talk to the perfumer about your creations, and then share it. So there would be an expert as well as just me playing around and sharing. So this is a thought from 11 years ago. So I'm just thinking, like, where are we going to go in 11 years from now even? So what I'm seeing is it's going to be an intelligent, instant, and invisible system. And by that, I wanted to touch upon the subject, what if data was smellable? So our sensors right now are not actually that great. So like the Enos technology, but these guys at Washington University St. Louis said, well, instead of focusing on building even better and stronger sensors and machine capabilities to understand and make sense of the knowledge, why don't we just hack into the system of the insect? We put on a computer on their back that is generated by the motor, by their movement, and essentially whatever the insect is able to detect olfactorily is then processed through this mini computer. And the locusts have special threads on their wings, and so the threads we're able to heat them and cool them, and by doing so, able to direct these animals to specific locations. So obviously, this is the money that's going to this, and the reason people are looking into this is more for security. So bombs and security threats. How can we use insects to go out and do this work for us? But the applications essentially could go much further than that. So Google is already mapping block for block, essentially, pollution levels. So invisible data, well, right here, Google's making it all visible. We're able to see the smells and the pollution hopefully around the world soon. This is San Francisco. And did you know that our body odor as a biometric identifier has a lower error rate than iris, fingerprint, and facial recognition? So that means that our body odor is actually a combination of our mother's, our father's genes, as well immune systems within the genes, and our own. So it's pretty robust. And then the fact that it's hard to replicate is because it's chemical. And we're actually not at that level of being able to replicate at that level of detail. So for security, biometric identification is actually being used on governmental levels. But what does this mean in the future for us in places like this? One of our favorite experiences, right? I'm sure. So how could this change that? How would it change unlocking our front door if our body and our body odor was the key? So in terms of odor detection and temperature detection, we have the Nest, and Google's already at it and is in our homes with the Nest thermostat and the Nest smoke detector. There's this Aware Air. It's able to detect allergens as well as VOCs. It's a startup in San Francisco, really well funded. So imagine being able to detect the odors, and all the problems that are potentially in our homes. Then there's NEOS, Aribel Technologies, that IFF is now helping with, and they're able to, it's essentially a handheld Enos device that's able to detect, last time I checked, 300 smells in like 30 seconds, something like that. So they have a database that they're working on that's becoming bigger and better. But essentially, it's very quick being able to detect what's around you. Oh my goodness. So, which brings me to question. That was all the things what if we're able to smell data? But now what if we can actually just enhance data with things like, I'm sorry, please forgive me. With things like vitamin C, lung health, like medicines. This is all essentially odorless, but imagine the possibilities of using scent and moisturizing agencies, all these things in our air, and being able to say is exactly what we wanted when we wanted. And what if air was hyper-personalized? So this was great. This was an experience, the algorithmic perfumery that I just got to experience. You put in your own personality and things like that. And then your fragrance goes through this giant robot. It holds quite a few components, but mine was a blend of about 5 different accords based on my personality, my preferences, my lifestyle. So this is a personalization that's happening in a much bigger way, bigger in terms of an installation. But what if it was miniaturized? What if we were able to use these voice activators that are already all around our house, especially in the US, very much accepted devices, to activate different things in our surrounding. This was a space for being at Milan Design Week, 2 weeks ago? And this is Google being able using smells and smell, color, touch, and sound to create beautiful rooms and giving everybody who walks through biometric readers, sensors, as well as, I think it's biometric sensors. So they walk through the different rooms, they're able to experience these things, and then they're able to learn about how their body reacts in these different environments. So this just happened now as an artistic piece. But what could this mean? This means that in the future, we're talking about biometrics. So like whatever is being personalized is going to be based on our own biology. It's going to be biometric. It's going to be learned from our past preferences and experiences. But because we're like perfume connoisseurs, for example, here, there's also going to be an active level of participation and customization that I believe will be very important. It's not just like the smell that the system knows that I will appear, but what if I'm feeling extra audacious today and I want to smell, I want to add more jasmine, I want to add more mint to my current scentscape. So all these things, I think, will definitely be part of it. And so this is the new headquarters of Amazon, all like with plants and trees, which makes us think like, how is smell and data and odor detection going to be impacting our workspaces? What kind of information? How is it going to help us, think better, breathe better, feel better? How is it going to impact our lives in our homes? All the decisions we make, the cooking that we're going to be doing, the security issues. How is it going to impact our daily rituals, getting ready in the morning? Like if all the fragrances and body products that we have, what if we're able to customize and use voice activation in the shower? Oh my God, add some more of this, add some more of that. And we're not going to have the problem of that I happen to have all the time is my shampoo doesn't smell like my deodorant, doesn't smell like my body lotion, and everything kind of becomes a jumble. Like what if all this could be like made into my personal daily scentscape? And then I add a wearable that enhances certain aspects of it. And how is all this going to impact the way we dream and sleep? So the future is now, as people like to say. So the challenge for large companies will be to produce in small volumes and to fulfill the needs for co-creation and customization. So it's a volume problem. Like even with all the technology available, big companies, this is the challenge. The opportunity for smaller companies lies in creating a new ecosystem where niche brands can seamlessly collaborate with technologies that enable new interactions with customers. So new marketplaces, new interactions, new learnings. All this is something that is going to be much easier for smaller players. Yay! So what are we saying? We're saying that scent emitting, this is very broad, but that scent emitting and scent detecting is really going to be changing the way, and this is all AI enabled, or have to be completely intelligent. And our interaction with scent, with these aspects, is going to be very important, and this is where we're going to have to be very conscious in our design process. So at what points are the customizations going to happen? At what points is human interference going to come in? What makes us feel good, and what makes us feel actively part of the process, and when and why? So my leaving points are, simple and intelligent interactions will enhance your story. So we're talking about UX. It's not like we don't want to standardize user experience online to define the right fragrance that will help. Every brand or every marketplace has to have their unique way of doing it. And that's going to enhance who you are and why people come to you. AI will revolutionize the way information is gained from customers and how you will interact with your customers. This is very important to understand. If we're not putting the groundwork down now, it's going to potentially be a bit late in the game. So the competitive advantage will not be determined by your company alone, but by the strength of your partners and your whole ecosystem. And so those are my thoughts for you guys today.